I'm Casey.
And I'm Fallon.
And this is
Render the
Darkness.
Ooh.
Alright, today we are coming at you with our second case out of Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Arkansas. It's not a real song.
Mm-mm.
Sponsored. Ha! Ha! Wait, in case it is a real song, not sponsored. As if I know all the songs in existence ever.
This is true.
For all I know, some mountain man hummed that in the 1800s and didn't, when it copyrighted it, TM, that shit, and I didn't know it.
Very possible. Very, very possible.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do our fun fact for this episode. In the Victorian era, men with mustaches used a mustache cup with a specially made guard to prevent their facial hair from dipping into their drinks. Bonus fact, I would really love to have one of these cups.
Why?
Then nobody got a mustache with
It's not that noticeable.
I don't know, man. I'm getting older. It's getting darker. They keep telling me it's the lighting, but I don't think so. It's in every room. Also, because I Googled them and they look really dope.
Oh, did they?
They do. They look really cool, actually. Also, just for the, antiqueness of it. Just to be able to say, this is my mustache cup. And it not be a cup that actually has a picture of a mustache on it.
That would be funnier.
Before we get into the episode, Fallon, I must ask you a question. Would you also like one of those cups?
No, thank you.
You haven't even seen it. Hater.
Well, let me see it.
Oh, I have to click and Google. You have a phone? Oh. That'd be what we're recording on.
I do have a phone. Yeah.
You're using it all the time. Get off your phone for just a minute, Fallon.
I know.
Then you would be able to Google things.
No, I'm sorry. There's something wrong.
Okay, now that we've gotten all the goofiness out of the way...
Wait.
Okay. Now that we've gotten all the goofiness out of the way, let's focus on the tragedy of the case that we're going to cover today, which is the senseless murder of Stacy Errickson. Now, before we get into this case, I want to say up front, there is a content warning on this case. There will be mention of things in this that may be triggering for some, so if you're sensitive to any form of true crime or sexually explicit content or words, please skip this episode, as scenarios regarding these things and things of this nature are mentioned in this case. That being said, I will also say, like most true crime cases, this case will be infuriating in some parts, but I promise if you stick with it to the end, there is justice, or at least as much justice as can be had in a senseless tragedy like this one at the end. I also want to get on my soapbox real quick for a minute, and I know I've done this before, but I'm going to do it again. I will never, ever understand why in these cases it is so difficult to find information on the victim, but the one who committed the crime, entire history from birth to death.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me at all. And that, I mean, if they're dead, obviously, but it's everything about them is completely accessible, but you try looking into the victim, and I mean, don't get me wrong, there's resources out there. Obviously, there's resources more for, some victims than others, but it should not be that way to me.
Yeah.
I feel like the victims' lives should be more notable than the lives of the criminals.
Agreed.
Then again, I guess if that were the case, then, people like us wouldn't have podcasts. I mean, I guess we could have podcasts if we were talking more about the victims than the criminal, but, most people's interest in true crime is typically the psychology behind the criminals. I understand that part too. I'm not saying that, it should be more the criminal than the victim, or more the victim than the criminal. I just think that it should be as easily accessible to get information on the victim if you want to know more about the victim and their lives then it is the criminal.
Right.
It should be equal to, not greater or less than, in my opinion. And it always drives me nuts when I do these cases and I have to dig so hard for information about a victim.
Understand. Completely agree.
That being said, I'm going to get off my soapbox and we're going to get into the case. Stacy Ray Sullivan Riley Errickson was born in Pulaski County, Arkansas on December 15, 1971. Her mother's name is Carolyn Moore, and she had a twin brother named Tracy Sullivan, or has a twin brother named Stacy Sullivan. Stacy also had 2 children. I did get their names, but I'm not including them because I don't know if they would want me to, so I just think it's more respectful to the case not to. But I will say she had a boy and a girl, and she was a very devoted mother whose main goal in life was to make sure that her kids had the best life possible. And for her age, she was seemingly absolutely doing that.
Awesome.
At the time of her death, Stacy was only 22 years old, and she was working as a nurse technician at the Arkansas Pediatric Facility. Before we talk about the incident, let's talk about the monster of this case, because sadly, most all these cases do consist of a monster. His name was Marcel Wayne Williams. He was born on August 20th, 1970, so not much older than Stacy. He was born in North Little Rock, Arkansas. He was one of 4 children, and it's reported, as it usually is in these cases, and it is not an excuse or justification for the things these monsters grow up to do, but he was reportedly abused and neglected by his stepfather and his mother on a regular basis, and he didn't know his biological father at all. By the time he was 15, he was tried and charged as an adult and sentenced to 20 years in prison for 6 counts of burglary. I could never say that right. Burglary and 1 count of aggravated assault.
At 15?
At 15.
Dang.
While completing this sentence, which he only served 9 years of, before being paroled in April of 1994, it was reported that Williams was a victim of a gang grape. I'm going to say grape instead of the other word.
Okay. Sorry, that just kind of threw me off for a second. I wasn't expecting. I was like,
I'm going to use that word instead of the other word. But we all know what it means. It's not a word I like to say. It's not a word that YouTube or a lot of the podcast places really like for you to say either. So I just tried to substitute that with something else.
Okay, I got you.
While out on parole, very shortly after he was out on parole, Williams had managed to kidnap and grape 2 women before he began searching for what would be his 3rd and final victim. Only this time he wouldn't stop at just that. Sadly, he would take this attack to the fullest extent it could be taken. On the morning of November 20th, 1994, Stacy had dropped her kids off at the babysitter's and was on her way to work when she decided to stop for gas at a gas station in Jacksonville, Arkansas. Little did she know that Williams was waiting in the dark searching for his next victim, and we may never know why his focus zeroed in on her, but it did. It was determined at approximately 6:45 a.m., which I read in another source, that police were able to get a precise time of the event, and they noted that it happened at precisely 6:34 a.m. So just in case that's the correct source, I want to include it. But either way, it was while she was pumping her gas. Williams would come up behind her with a gun to her back and threaten her life if she didn't do whatever he told her to do. Stacy did in fact do what he told her to do, no doubt just hoping and praying that if she cooperated, he might not hurt her, as I'm sure most of us in her situation probably would have done.
Right.
Williams then demanded that Stacy get into the passenger seat, and he proceeded to get into the driver's seat. He then began going from ATM to ATM, demanding Stacy make withdrawals from each one. By the time he had finished hitting the ATMs, it was concluded that they had gone to 18 different ATMs and had made a withdrawal of an accumulated $350. Once he was finished driving to the ATMs, he drove to a location near the Arkansas River, where sadly, he would grape and strangle her to death. Before fleeing the crime scene, Williams would dig a shallow grave and he would bury her in it. There were 2 eyewitnesses who saw the abduction who would later be able to positively identify Williams, who was captured 9 days after the murder, thanks to the outstanding charges he already had regarding the kidnapping and rape of the other 2 women he had committed prior to kidnapping and murdering Stacy. He was captured on November 29, 1994. Williams initially tried to tell police that he did kidnap Stacy, same as the other 2 women, but just like them, he didn't kill her. He let her go, and he claimed she was still alive when he left her.
Mm-hmm.
That claim would be short-lived. Police would find Stacy's body on December 5th, 1994. And they definitely found plenty of forensic evidence to prove Williams had sexually assaulted her. That, combined with the autopsy concluding her cause of death to be strangulation on April 5th, 1995, Williams would finally be charged. The charges were submitted by Pulaski County prosecutors and consisted of kidnapping, aggravated robbery, rape, and murder. On January 6, 1997, Williams would stand trial for the charges for the crimes against Stacy Ray Errickson. He was found guilty on all charges, and on January 14, 1997, he was sentenced to death for Stacy's murder.
Good.
This sentence would be filed into motion on top of the sentence he was already serving, which was 3 life sentences plus 70 years for the kidnapping and rape of the other 2 women. You would think that would be the end of this case, right?
Yeah, I mean, he got 3 life sentences, 70 years, and the death penalty. I mean,
what more is there, right? Of course it's not the end of this case.
Okay.
This poor family. Stacy's family would have to wait 20 years to finally see justice served, and Williams' sentence followed through.
20 years?
20 years.
God.
Let's go over a little bit of why that was. Before we go over that, keep in mind, Williams would eventually admit to everything he did to Stacy and would often proclaim he was sorry and wished he could take it back. Question is, was he truly sorry, or was he just sorry he got caught and terrified of the death sentence? You know, like the one he gave Stacy, only she didn't get 20 extra years to be alive.
Right.
But I'll let you decide where he really stood.
I'm going to say it's the latter.
So the first thing that would happen is Williams would submit his first appeal to the Supreme Court of Arkansas and be denied that in 1999. He would continue to file appeals until he exhausted all of his allotted appeals and be denied for each one.
Good.
Once he ran out of appeals, he would go on to file a post-conviction application. For those that don't know what that is, a post-conviction application is used to request a court to review a conviction with the goal of reconsidering or changing the outcome of the original conviction.
Okay.
In his application, he tried to claim that he felt inadequately represented by his original defense team because they failed to bring to light his childhood traumas. That's what he claimed.
Okay.
He requested a new trial be held that included all his personal mitigating factors, which, for those that don't know what mitigating factors are, there are certain circumstances that may reduce the severity of a crime, or it may reduce the blame on the person who committed the crime based on the experiences they have had. Basically, he thought that that if he had had his childhood dramas included, that it may have played a role in the jury's choice between the death penalty opposed to life in prison.
Okay.
Which, keep in mind, he was already sentenced to 3 consecutive life in prison terms.
Right.
He thought that they might have chosen life in prison instead of death had they had the knowledge of all of his psychological traumas. Luckily, in January 2002, his request was denied by Pulaski County Circuit Judge John Plaguey, and of course, Williams tried to appeal. And again, was denied. This time, he was denied by the actual Arkansas Supreme Court.
Good.
The end of it, right? Nope.
I was going to say, I'm guessing not. Okay.
Of course not. Williams wasn't done. In 2007, Williams would again attempt to use the lack of mitigating factors as a probable cause for resentencing. Finally, sadly, and surprisingly, it seemed to work this time.
Oh.
On April 11th, 2007, Chief U.S. District Judge Leon Holmes would give Williams a legal reprieve, which for those that don't know what that means, it means he gave him a suspension or a delay in his original sentence, i.e., his death sentence, because he basically paused his death sentence.
Right.
Because he actually agreed with Williams that the mitigating factors of his childhood trauma may have swayed the jury in the decision between death penalty or life in prison. The judge told the state that they had two choices. They could either give Williams a new sentencing hearing that did include information of his mitigating factors, or they could commute his sentence from the death penalty to life. Luckily, again, the state decided they had another choice than the two the judge had given them, and they appealed Judge Holmes' decision to the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and thankfully for Stacy's family, the appeal was granted, and Judge Holmes' decision was overturned on August 18th, 2009.
Dang. I'm glad it was overturned.
So, at this point, this guy's just doing whatever the hell he can to prolong this as long as he can.
Yeah.
It was determined Williams didn't experience any prejudice in his sentence hearing because Williams and his legal team made the conscious decision at the time of his hearing to not use those mitigating factors out of fear that the only witnesses, which were Williams himself and his mother, would not be feasible witnesses, and they were concerned that because they had already used the tactic of admitting he was guilty as a hopeful avenue of getting a lighter sentence, they thought releasing this information might actually hinder, if not negatively affect, the cross-examination of Williams.
Okay.
That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Somehow, in an insane turn of events, Williams would find himself a plaintiff in a lawsuit in 2010. The suit was filed against the state regarding Arkansas's execution policies, specifically those related to the state's lethal injection protocol, and since Williams was a death row inmate, he was included as a plaintiff.
Oh.
Because he was in this lawsuit, he wasn't able to receive a date for his death sentence. It was prolonged for however long he was a plaintiff in this lawsuit.
Oh, goodness gracious. Those lawsuits can take years.
Well, despite that, a death warrant was finally issued for Williams on July 12, 2011. However, a month before his scheduled execution date, Williams received a clemency hearing. For those that don't know what a clemency hearing is, it basically allows a convicted person to request a reduction of their sentence or a pardon.
Oh.
This time, the plea made by Williams' lawyers were based almost entirely on his troubled past. Somehow, despite there being 6 out of 7 voting to dismiss the plea, his sentence was postponed. And in the words of Stu Mocker, not sponsored, but wait, there's more.
Oh, golly.
He would receive a new death warrant in September 2015. He was supposed to officially be executed this time on December 14th, 2015. But yet again, in October, the execution was delayed. In March of 2017, Arkansas State Governor Asa Hutchinson made the decision that 8 inmates that had been sitting on death row would be executed by April. Those 8 were Jason McGehee, Don Williams Davis, Liddell Lee, Jack Harold Jones, Stacy Eugene Johnson, Bruce Earl Ward, Kenneth Dwayne Williams, and Marcel Wayne Williams. So Hutchinson wanted them all executed literally by the end of the next month from the date of his announcement.
Oh, okay.
Williams' new execution date was now set to be April 24th, 2017. He was set to be executed along with another inmate whose name was Jack Harold Jones. It was going to be the first double execution that the U.S. had had in 17 years.
Mm.
Let's talk for just a second about who Jack Harold Jones was and his crimes compared to Williams.
Okay.
Jack Harold Jones was a serial killer from Ohio who was convicted of the murders of 3 women, Regina Harrison, Lori Barrett, and Mary Phillips, as well as beating Mary's 11-year-old daughter Lacey to within an inch of her life in Florida and Arkansas.
Oh my God.
Mary and Lacey Phillips' attacks took place in Bald Knob, Arkansas, between 1983 and 1995. And that's just the ones the police knew about. He's suspected of several more. Luckily, Lacey would survive and was able to give a description of Jones. So just another monster of a human being.
Right.
Among the controversy behind Hutchinson's decision to expedite so many executions so quickly was the discovery and assumption that one of the main reasons that he chose to do this was because one of the 3 drugs, which was midazolam, I think is how you say it, midazolam. It's one of the 3 drugs that is used in Arkansas for lethal injections, and it was going to expire at the end of April. Which, if that's true, I feel safe in saying, good. Maybe that was fate's way of stepping in to get some kind of justice for the victims of these inmates who had been sitting on death row for years by this point.
Yeah.
Sorry, was that too harsh?
No.
Was that too mean?
No,
Sorry.
no, not you. It's just the fact that he made a decision based on the fact that the drug was going to expire.
Well, yeah. Apparently, it's a really hard drug to get a hold of.
Okay. That's why I was just like.
But again, I think that was more of like fate's way of saying, come on, like give these family members some kind of justice here.
Yeah, I mean, it's been way too long already, but like
way
I said, that just
too
kind of
long.
like threw me off because I was like, oh, okay.
Some people, I'm trying to block this light that's coming in and off my. Anyway, some people tried to oppose and stop such a rushed string of executions, referring to them as inhumane and unjust, but Arkansas and the victims' families, for the most part, stood by the decision to expedite the executions.
Right.
However, 4 of the 8 selected would end up not being executed in April as planned. Those 4 were initially Bruce Earl Ward, Jason McGeehee, Don Williams Davis, and Stacy Eugene Johnson. I think one of them received clemency and got a reduction in the sentence, and the other 3 were wrapped up in other lawsuits.
Okay.
So, 3 of the 8 were ordered to continue. 3 of the 8 executions were ordered to continue, and that was the sentence of Liddell Lee, Kenneth Dwayne Williams, and Jack Harold Jones. You may be thinking to yourself, but Casey, that's only 7, and you didn't mention Marcel Wayne Williams.
Right.
And you would be correct. That would be because on March 27, 2017, Williams was yet again given a second clemency hearing.
Oh my gosh.
He went in front of the parole board for this hearing, 7 members to be exact. Now keep in mind, all of these hearings that he has to go to, Stacy's family is having to relive this whole thing just over and over and over.
And he admitted to all this.
He well admitted to all of this and had apologized as how much he was reformed and he wished he could take it back and he had already admitted to everything at the beginning when he was first arrested.
Wow.
So here we are, 16, 17 years later? No, actually, yeah, about that. Anyways, that was 20 years later. Because that was in 1994.
Yeah, 1994.
Yeah.
And we're at where now?
2017. Anyway, we're not great at mathing, apparently. Not really the point, though. Again, he went in front of the parole board for this hearing, 7 members to be exact. He used this opportunity to profess again his remorse and beg the panel yet again to commute his sentence from death penalty to life in prison. He tried to claim he was reformed, had found religion, and could help others who were troubled. It would be a shame to kill someone who could help others. His lawyers begged for mercy in consideration of Williams' tortured past. Stacy's family, of course, begged for them to show no mercy and carry out the original sentence of the death penalty.
Yeah.
Stacy's friends and family reminded the parole board how Williams didn't show Stacy any mercy, robbing her 2 children of their mother without a second thought, and how Stacy had grown up without a father and she didn't turn to a life of crime. Ultimately, 5 of the 7 members who voted, they voted to deny Williams clemency.
Good.
Williams' lawyers did everything they could possibly do to delay this execution. He went as so far as to appeal the sentence based on his weight.
What the hell's that got to do with anything?
He tried to say he was really obese. I think he was around 400 pounds.
Oh.
So he tried to say that, I don't know if he tried to say that the dosage that they would typically use wouldn't be a sufficient amount to do it humanely, or if he was trying to say, I don't know. I don't really know what the weight thing had to do with it, but that's one of the things he tried to use as a reason for why he shouldn't be executed.
I was going to say, I'm sure, they're going to take that into consideration when they give him a dose.
You would think that their response to that would be, well, we'll just up the dose.
Yeah. I mean,
which he was denied when he tried to do it for his weight. He was denied.
Good.
Finally, on April 24th, 2017, 3 hours after Jack Harold Jones's execution, Williams was pronounced dead via lethal injection at 10:33 p.m. Upon leaving the courthouse, Stacy's twin brother, Tracy, was quoted as saying, "Justice has been served. It's about time."
Yeah. Oh, that took so long.
Isn't that insane?
That is crazy.
That's our justice system. Isn't that look, I know the death penalty is a touchy topic, and I know there's a lot of debate surrounding it. And I know there's people who think that it's inhumane and it shouldn't exist, and I know there are people who feel the opposite of that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think it is very case specific. And in this particular case, I think the fact that he had already done what he did to two women before doing what he did to Stacy, and Stacy being his third victim, and the fact that he was just getting more aggressive and more violent with what he was doing, the more victims he was collecting, is enough evidence to show that there was no reformation of this man. He had already been in an adult prison. He already knew what it was like to be in a prison. He already knew what it was going to be like for him to be sent to prison. And yet he continued to immediately, as soon as he got out of prison, commit a crime way more advanced than any of the crimes he had originally committed before being sentenced the first time.
Right, yeah.
So for me, the death penalty thing is very case specific, and in this particular case, I'm going to have to agree with Stacy's family that I do not think he was reformed. I do think if he had gotten out any sooner or at all, he would have done it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it would have...
He was so young when he first experienced all those things, and if his trauma had the effect on him that it claims that he did, then, that was a psychological breakage, and that didn't have anything to do with reformation. That had to do with a chemical imbalance and a psychological defect. It really didn't have anything to do with whether or not he could read enough books to make him better.
Right.
That's just my opinion. I don't know why this case infuriated me so much. I think it's just because I just kept thinking about her poor family just getting drugged through this time and time again.
Yeah.
And just having to relive the worst day of their lives over and over while a man who is causing them that level of pain is standing in front of them begging for their sympathy and begging for leniency. And it's like, how dare you?
Yeah, that's something I've never understood. Is like a lot of killers will do that. They'll do something really horrible, really horrendous, and they'll turn around and be like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do it. If I could take it back, I would." It's like,
but
no, you wouldn't.
You would take back getting caught.
Yeah, that's the part of it.
You would take back the consequences of what you did. You wouldn't take back what you did. It makes me so angry because it's so tragic and so senseless.
I agree.
Like these poor kids had to grow up without their mother, who was so young and doing her very best to provide them the best life she could, and doing that at such a young age.
Yeah.
Just tragic all the way around. Just tragic. And rest in peace to Stacy. And I hope her family have found some kind of a way to. I know you can never heal from something like that,
Yeah.
but I hope they've found a way to have peace now that justice has been served to the highest degree it could be.
Yeah.
And I hope her kids are doing well. And
Yeah, me too.
that's about all you can say in a case like this, I think.
Agreed.
But other than that, I'm sorry I had my hand on my face for half of this, but I've got a light that is blinding me from my curtain over here. But you won't know anything about it because we got the green screen and you won't get to see my light. Actually, you probably see it on my face still.
Yeah, probably.
Fallon's light is just her glasses reflecting.
Hey, yeah, I got a little bit right here.
It's her glasses reflecting on her chin line. It's a jawline, chin line.
Chin line.
Anyway, that is our episode for today, and we appreciate you guys spending your time with us and for all of your support. If you like what we do, please give us a like, a subscribe, a share.
If you have any suggestions,
yeah, we're only on Arkansas. We've got plenty of states left to go. If you got any state recommendations, we'd be more than happy to hear them and do a case on it for you. And even if it's not U.S. related, if you have a case anywhere,
yeah,
we'll get it. I promise. We'll do it.
Yeah, true crime, paranormal, cryptids.
Yeah.
Folklore.
Anything strange and bizarre, we'll cover that shit. Yeah. It's not too good when the leg's on you, is it? But anyway, other than that, thank you guys for spending your time with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are
Render the Darkness.
Bye.